This video will help you understand what a Crummey Notice is and whether or not you should be filing them with your beneficiaries. If you don't know who I am, my name is Chris Dime. I'm a financial planner out of Edmonds, Washington, and I specialize in working with folks to and through retirement. If you've already set up an irrevocable trust, or you're planning to, and you're planning to have regular or continued contributions go into that irrevocable trust, you might want to be aware of how Crummey Notices work so that you can stay in compliance and get all your paperwork in order to avoid any downstream negative effects of the IRS knocking on your door. Especially for those of you who have assumed the role of trustee or are going to at some point in the future, it'll behoove you to be aware of what Crummey Notices are. So let's jump in. So in the world of estate planning, there's a number of different ways you can gift things to people. You could, of course, just outright hand them a piece of property like a piece of artwork or hand them the keys to a car. You could also stroke them a check for a certain amount of money on their birthday, whatever. At the higher echelons of wealth, however, where more trusts are involved in one's planning, it's not uncommon that trusts will be given assets for those beneficiaries on a regular basis. Now, using an irrevocable trust for gift giving, it's a more sophisticated method of gifting to beneficiaries. Think of it like gifting with guardrails. Rather than outright gifting property to a certain number of beneficiaries, you might instead gift property to a trust and then have some rules and responsibilities in that trust to maybe impart some wisdom, encourage the beneficiaries to work together, whatever. Basically, you'll set up a few parameters on how the beneficiaries can benefit from the assets you've gifted into this trust. The trust, and by extension the trustee, will serve as kind of that gatekeeper between the beneficiaries having unfettered access to the property inside the trust and the grantor's wishes for what they ultimately wanted to impart on the beneficiaries, whether it's wisdom or only withdrawing a certain amount for health, education, maintenance, support, whatever. Now, generally, when you gift someone money, for example, on their birthday, you gift them $5,000 or whatever, you aren't required to file any sort of special paperwork with any organization. If you gift someone a lot, aka above 18 grand for 2024, that's the annual gifting exemption amount, and you're allowed to gift up to 18 grand per person if you'd like to. And there's no limit on how many people you can gift 18 grand to. And you still wouldn't be required to file any sort of special paperwork with the IRS. Now, if you're going to gift above and beyond those numbers, you're probably going to want to start filing something with the IRS, basically without getting into the estate planning nuances of gifting. There's a certain level of gifting that you're allowed to do in total throughout your lifetime, called your lifetime gift exemption. And for nowadays, 2024, I think that number's around 14 million or so. In 2026, the best minds in finance are assuming that's going to be closer to 7 million per person. If you gift more than that, or you die with more than that in your net worth, you can plan on paying some level of estate taxes at death. However, you are allowed to gift up to that 18 grand number, usually that's adjusted for inflation, to as many people as you want to every single year, and that doesn't hurt your lifetime gifting exemption. Now, why does this matter? Well, ultimately, if you've gifted assets into an irrevocable trust for beneficiaries, but you want to keep making contributions to that trust, you might take that $18,000 number, multiply it by however many beneficiaries there are, and gift that money into the trust. And you could do that, no downstream tax consequences as a result. Now, without getting into the nuances of estate planning, when you gift assets into an irrevocable trust, and you don't want those assets dragged back into your estate for the purposes of estate tax avoidance, you need to make what's called a present and outright interest gift. What that means is you can't say, here's your money, but you can't access it for a number of years. You have to give it as a present interest. You can use it right now if you want to kind of gift. Where a Crummey Notice comes in, however, in kind of the genesis of today's video, if you're going to gift money into an irrevocable trust, it's generally going to be in your best interest to notify the beneficiaries that you have made a present interest gift to the trust, and they have a right to withdraw those proceeds, should they choose, within a particular time frame, usually somewhere in the ballpark of like 30 to 60 days. And after that 30 to 60 day mark, if the beneficiary does not withdraw the present interest gift you made into the trust, the trustee could use those proceeds towards some other type of investment within the trust. And then the beneficiary wouldn't be able to pull it out. So it's sort of like hey, here's a notice that you have a window of time to pull money out if you want to. Otherwise, that money is going to stay in the trust. Now, sending Crummey Notices is not mandatory by any means. However, it's a general best practice as a way of officially signifying that you've made a present interest gift, you've notified all the beneficiaries, and they chose to let their opportunity to withdraw those funds lapse. And then, of course, you'd file all that paperwork with the trust documents, because if the IRS ever comes knocking and says, hey, you weren't making present interest gifts with all that money, you have a paper trail to say, no, in fact, I let all the beneficiaries know every single year that I made gifts. And the etymology behind the Crummey Notice has to do with a tax court case using a guy with the last name of Crummey that ultimately said this is how they were making gifts into the trust, and the tax court found that this was a legitimate method of gifting to beneficiaries in a present interest while also having the trust retain those assets and use it for beneficiaries for their benefit. Let's walk through a quick example as to how this would work. Let's say grandma and grandpa are getting up in years and their vacation home in Arizona, they used it for a great many years, but they're just not as mobile as they used to be. Traveling is challenging. Dealing with maintenance and repairs is kind of a total pain in the butt. They want to gift this vacation home to the grandkids. And let's say there's 6 grandkids. Their intent is that the 6 grandkids share this vacation home, and or maybe they do a big family reunion every year, whatever. That's the goal behind gifting the property to the beneficiaries within that irrevocable trust. They also want to get it out of their estate because property in Arizona might continue to appreciate, and they don't want that appreciation dragged back into their estate for the purposes of paying estate taxes. Now, of course, this is assuming that grandma and grandpa don't need the proceeds from maybe selling that home to fund their retirement. This is sort of a grandma and grandpa already secured their own mask, and now they're looking to help secure the mask of others. Now, they could have just outright gifted that property in 1/6 equal shares to each beneficiary, but that kind of gets messy on paperwork, and a lot of times that can cause some frustration with who's in charge. So putting the assets inside of an irrevocable trust with clearly outlined expectations to how the beneficiaries will use the property might be a more sophisticated and helpful way of gifting assets to the next generation. However, like any of you who have property know, owning a piece of property isn't free. So there might be some existing and ongoing maintenance costs, property taxes, etc. that fall into owning property. Now, you could expect all the beneficiaries you just gifted this property to pony up the money and pay for all those expenses themselves. They could do that. Or maybe grandma and grandpa, while they're still alive, want to continue gifting to that trust to help with the maintenance and support and other future uses of the money if they want to do remodels in the future, whatever. Now, in 2024, the annual gift exemption is $18,000. That means grandma could gift to each one of the beneficiaries $18,000 for a combined $108,000. Grandpa could do the exact same thing. So grandma and grandpa combined could contribute to the trust every single year $216,000, probably plus inflation, until the day they pass away, with no negative estate planning consequences for themselves. Now, I don't know if they need to necessarily do that, but it might be an easy and convenient way to asset shift to the next generation without any sort of estate planning consequences. Now, again, it's not mandatory, but the trustee of this Arizona property, and we'll just assume it's the oldest of all the grandkids because maybe they're the most financially responsible, or grandma and grandpa think so. When the trustee gets notice from grandma and grandpa that $216,000 is going into the trust for the benefit of the property and the beneficiaries, in order for grandma and grandpa to signify officially that this was a present interest gift, the beneficiaries need to have their right to withdraw the gift known. And so the trustee would probably be wise to pass out Crummey notices officially saying, hey, grandkid number 1, grandma and grandpa each gave you $18,000 or $36,000. You have a present interest gift and you are permitted to withdraw that $36,000 if you want to. And of course, that letter is replicated to all 6 beneficiaries. Now, while the beneficiary is legally permitted to withdraw that gift as a present interest gift and, put it in their pocket and go do whatever, it's probably going to be the wisest decision for all the beneficiaries to not take the money out of the trust, but rather to leave it in the trust. And that's because if the purpose behind the trust is to benefit the beneficiaries and grandma and grandpa see that the beneficiaries are just taking the money and running, well, they're probably going to stop gifting to the trust because the grandkids aren't abiding by ultimately what the intent was, which was to use this gift for future benefit. Now, there cannot be any sort of agreement officially that grandma and grandpa will give money to the trust and the grandkids have to leave it in the trust. You're not allowed to legally require beneficiaries to do that, but under the table, all the grandkids should probably agree not to take the money out. Otherwise, grandma and grandpa might stop gifting to the trust. You see Crummey notices a lot of times in things like irrevocable life insurance trusts, and I'll link above to a previous explainer video on how those work, but ultimately, the money contributed to the trust is used to pay insurance premiums every single year. And let's say the annual premium was $216,000. Conveniently, that's the gift exemption for every single beneficiary times 2, aka grandma and grandpa giving everybody $18,000 each. Well, it's probably going to be in the best interest of all the beneficiaries for all the beneficiaries not to pull that money out of the trust, but rather to let the trustee use those contributions to pay those insurance premiums and keep buying more life insurance that will compound and then ultimately turn into death benefit proceeds when grandma and grandpa pass away. Again, nothing legally can be mandated that they don't take the money out, at least during that 30 to 60 day window. However, that's where social pressure can come in handy, because odds are if all the beneficiaries can be pressured into not distributing assets, they'll all benefit the most in the long term. So hopefully that was helpful in breaking down how Crummey Notices work and in which situations they would apply. They are not required to be sent out if money isn't being gifted into the trust. However, if money is being gifted into the trust and the trustee wants to signify that these are present interest gifts and get this money out of the estate of grandma and grandpa, it would very much be in their favor to file Crummey Notices as an official way of notifying the beneficiaries that they have a right to withdraw the assets within a particular window of time. So from a cost to action standpoint, if you're the trustee or are going to be the trustee of an irrevocable trust, you're definitely going to want to know how Crummey Notices work and why you should probably file them in the trust documents every year. If you have further questions, drop them in the comments below or get in touch on the website. We'll help you get squared away. Have an awesome rest of your day. We'll talk to you later. Bye.